This Fish Eater Friday answer might get a little long. I received a rather long response to my video on why I quit the Society of St. Pius X, called Quitting the SSPX. I'm going to quote simply from the middle and answer that part, because there are no questions on either side that I can see. There's a lot of commentary. This person has recently discovered the Society of St. Pius X, and then she goes on about that and the problems in the church and the world and things. Then here's her questions, and there are several. But rather than creating separatist movements, why not encourage Pope Francis to return to tradition? Why not create a lobby at the Vatican for returning to the Latin Mass and rejecting any forms of further modernization? Catholicism will die unless leaders in Rome stop allowing liberal modernist agendas to influence them and lobby them. I'm especially concerned with Pope Francis recently admitting that there are lobbies in the Vatican, including a gay lobby and a Freemason lobby. In some, separatist movements are not enough to preserve Catholicism and reject efforts by the media and politicians to encourage modernization. And I think here is the problem. When a small group separates from a large group, all right, one presumes the large group's right. Okay, the small group's therefore the separatist movement, and she here is calling the Society of St. Pius X the separatist movement, and she's calling the us here in the Catholic Church under Pope Michael a separatist movement. Now, this is an oversimplification. The separatist movement is actually the Vatican II modernist conciliar church founded by anti-popes John the 23rd and Paul VI. That is the separatist movement. This was the goal of Satan. Satan was infiltrating the church back in the 1800s. We have it from the Alta Vendita. In the 1900s, we have it from the story of Seminary Student 1025. The fictionalized version is AA 1025, and it's available for sale. The real version is also available in Key Documents to Understanding the Great Apostasy. The communists were infiltrating the church. I would say other secret societies like the Rosicrucians, etc., they were all working together to infiltrate the church. Do not think that these were actually separate efforts. It's my belief that they were working together. Now, true, a Freemason might not have known a communist. They may have set in different groups in case this one fails. We've got this other plan over here. Okay. So the separatist movement is the Vatican II conciliar church. So when we separated from the Vatican II conciliar church, it was in order to return to the church that had been stolen from us by Roncalli, anti-Pope John the 23rd, and Montini, Paul VI. That's why we left. And so we are not a separatist movement. Yes, I'd like George Bergoglio to return to tradition. I'd like him to become a Catholic, because he is not a Catholic. And this is where the Society of St. Pius X has sold us all down the river. Okay, the Society of St. Pius X has held strenuously to the proposition that all these fools in Rome, John 23rd, Paul VI, John Paul I, John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and Francis I are all popes. Okay? I probably have discussed it elsewhere. I know it's in my writings, if not here. But let us take a look at what John the 23rd and Paul VI gave us through Vatican II and its perfidious spirit. Archbishop Lefebvre called the Novus Ordo Missae a bastard mass in 1976 at Lille. Would a true pope give us a bastardized mass? Okay? Especially a mass which in its then vernacular translations, which they've recently corrected, interestingly enough, just in the last few years, are invalid by changing the words of our Lord Jesus Christ from for many to for all. Invalid. A Mass where we offer up not a spotless sacrifice, but the work of human hands in the forms of bread and wine. A Mass in which immediately after the consecration, when they still teach in their catechisms that Jesus is supposed to become present, they say Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will come again. Yeah, that's not in the newer version of the Novus Ordo. I'm not sure when they dropped it. But in the early 70s, that's what they had us saying. Christ will come again. Why am I saying Christ will come again when Christ is supposed to have just right now come onto that table? A Mass, which is not celebrated at a beautiful altar with the priest back to the people but facing Almighty God, but rather a Mass which is celebrated at a table with the priest facing the people. And in the early days, the tabernacle was behind the priest. In other words, I'm going to turn my back on you, God. Forget you. It's now me and the people. We're going to have a nice big meal here. Forget you. All right? And then we could go on this. But see, that's the problem. George Bergoglio is not head of the Catholic Church. He is not even a Catholic. Maybe I will get out a few of his quotes sometime and do a long video on just a few of his quotes. Because, I mean, he is committing heresy after heresy after heresy. Okay. So then the next question, why not create a lobby at the Vatican for returning to the Latin Mass and rejecting any forms of further modernization? My friend, that was attempted long before you were born. Okay. You're only 25 years old. I can understand you have grown up in this situation. You've just now realized it, and so you have gone over, I believe, to the Society of St. Pius X. Yeah, recently discovered the Society of St. Pius X. And then you're already seeing problems over there, I think. In the early 1970s, efforts were made, even in the late 1960s. The Autobii Intervention. Look that up on the internet. Look up the, what is that one by Autobii de Nantes? The Liber Accusationis. It's in English and in French. Autobii de Nantes prepared an accusation of heresy against anti-Pope Paul VI. And a bunch of his people, they went to Rome to serve the paperwork on Paul VI. It's the first time in history since the Lateran Treaty, in fact, the first time in history, that the Italian police were called into the Vatican by the Vatican to stop these people from serving the paperwork. Autobii de Nantes, I think, cooled his heels in an Italian jail, as did many of his people. Paul VI was officially served with the Liber Accusationis, accusing him of heresy. It was the opinion of Autobii de Nantes and some others that we have to institute an action against him canonically. Okay? They got to remember, in the early 1970s, we didn't know about cum ex apostolatus officio, the fact that if a heretic appears to be elected pope, he has no claim to the papacy. And people had not looked into his pre-election heresies. I've only looked into it enough to prove that he was a pre-election heretic. And he was a big one. He tells me that the Catholic Church is a problem. The Catholic Church is what's going to save my soul. That's where I've gone to save my soul. There are problems. It's not in the church. It might be in some of the people in the church. Okay? Any one of us in the Catholic Church can be a problem, but the church itself can't be a problem. And so there were attempts at getting the Latin Mass restored, of getting the heresy ousted. And what we found in the people like Ratzinger, just to name one, they wanted to keep the heresy and expand the heresy. Catholicism will die unless leaders in Rome stop allowing liberal modernist agendas to influence them and lobby them. For them, Catholicism has died. Catholicism will never die. It can be reduced to a handful, as the prophet Isaiah prophesies it will actually happen. Jesus himself said that the problems of this time will be so bad that if it be possible, even the elect will be deceived. It's my opinion, and it's a private opinion, that if it be possible, which is in parentheses, was actually added by the evangelists themselves, possibly. I don't know. Jesus could have said that. But, I mean, that the elect could be deceived is something that would be unthinkable at the time the Gospels were written. Like, are you sure Jesus said, yeah, he did say this. The elect could be deceived. Okay, I'm especially concerned with Pope Francis recently admitting that there are lobbies in the Vatican, including a gay lobby and a Freemason lobby. Okay, if he's so dadgum concerned, and if he is running the place over there, and he's definitely the in-charge man over there, how come they aren't at the at Termini, the Rome train station, waiting for a train out of there? I recall hearing a story about Pope Pius IX at the Vatican Council. He was listening to the speeches, and someone gave a speech against infallibility. He remained silent through the whole speech. Talks to his assistant. My office afterwards. Goes up to the papal apartment. In comes this, I believe it was a priest, a theologian obviously. And Pope Pius IX has him sit down. My dear father, that is probably the most heretical speech I've ever heard. And then the father starts, but I was quoting from Augustine and Aquinas and, that Pope Pius IX stopped him. And he said, you have two choices, my son, laicization or monastery. Choose now. If you've got people like that who are in the church, you get them out. Either into a monastery where they can save their soul silently, not be a problem, or out on the street, brother. Separatist movements are not enough to preserve Catholicism. They reject efforts by the media and politicians to encourage modernization. She also decries the fact that priests refuse to talk against, like, American liberalism and stuff. Now, I haven't gotten off onto some of these subjects. Okay, and there are a lot of subjects that need to be covered. I am starting with my priority is the Catholic faith. Okay, now it applies to a lot of other things. That's why I warned you this one would get awful long. I mean, I am seeing a lot of other things going on, and they need to be spoken against. And maybe I should start speaking more against them myself. I mean, we live in a country where 6 of the 9 Supreme Court justices are nominal Catholics. In other words, they claim the name of Catholic. Where the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the former governor of Kansas, a Democrat, doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, that really does not matter, is a nominal Catholic. She's pro-abortion. The Supreme Court has not reversed Roe versus Wade. I remember the hearings about Bork, because Roe versus Wade comes up in any Supreme Court justice hearing for their approval. And they were feeling him out on the subject. I think he didn't say much on that particular subject. But they came down and he said, I will uphold the Constitution. I think he did indicate that he would be for reversing Roe versus Wade, because he says the most unconstitutional decision that court ever made. And he said he'd uphold the Constitution. He never made Supreme Court justice. Around the same time, Clarence Thomas did, in spite of all of his activities. I'll leave you to look it up if you want to. It would be a matter of scandal and detraction. In any case, there are so many things to talk about. There's so much wrong in the world. And I could get off there and I could make a really long video if I wanted to. Just turning on the camera and just start talking about the problems in the world. No. How do we solve the problems in the world? It is by holding to the divine and Catholic faith, whole and entire. The Catechism, right here. I had this out in another video recently. This is the answer. It's the Catholic faith, holding to the Catholic faith, whole and entire. This is why I reject the Society of St. Pius X, because they do not hold the Catholic faith whole and entire. They have created their own little church, Petite Église. It has its own doctrines. Most of them are Catholic. A few are not, such as sacramental bishops. It's right in their own material. Lefebvre did not create Catholic bishops, but sacramental bishops. In other words, bishops who just merely administer the sacraments. I should probably say more on that some other time, because that's a big question. I haven't even sorted out quite what they mean by a sacramental bishop. It's not a Catholic bishop, I know that. No, we have to hold to the Catholic faith whole and entire, and when we do that, we immediately reject George Bergoglio and his predecessors clear back to Roncalli, and everything that's come out of the false Vatican. That's why we elected a pope in 1990, because to restore the church, as Father Sanborn the seminary used to say when I was in Armada back in 78, Le poison pure à la tête. The fish rots from the head. Okay? So how do we restore the fish, the church? We restore a decent head. We start at the top. Once we restore the Pope, then everybody else comes in line. The bishops come underneath the Pope. The priests come underneath their own bishops. And the faithful come underneath their pastors. We set the hierarchy back in order. Because this is a hierarchical institution. So if you want to preserve the faith, you want to fight all the problems in the world, get with me and get with the Catholic Church. We have to work together. Until we all get together and work together. And it's through prayer as our first weapon. It's not my mouth that's my first weapon. I used my knees earlier this morning. That's when I got out the big guns. Today I've got out the small gun right now as I'm making this video. No. We don't need separatist movements. That's why we need the Society of St. Pius X to return to the Catholic Church. That's why we need the CMRI to return to the Catholic Church. That's why we need the Society of St. Pius V to return to the Catholic Church. And every other traditionalist, bishop, priest, and layman to return to the Catholic Church. Then and only then can we unite together in prayer, learning and teaching the Catholic faith, becoming firm in the faith, and then we strike out in Catholic action and teach others and bring them to the faith. You want to end the problems in the world, convert it. We're not going to do it by lobbying. We're not going to do it by marches or rosaries in front of abortion clinics. No, it's by getting with the Pope, who will appoint bishops over us, and the bishops appoint pastors, and we all work together to restore and bring about the universal conversion. These other efforts are a waste of time. I've taken all your time on this Fish Eater Friday. So I hope you got a nice big piece of fish to eat in a little while. God bless you all.